In this video, I'm going to walk you through all of the basic tools that you need to know about if you want to start making furniture. One of the most common questions I get asked all the time is, I'm just getting started. What tools do I need to know about? Well, this video is for you. I'm going to walk you through cutting, shaping, milling, joining, sanding, measuring, all the tools that you need to know about, and better yet, at the end of this video, I'm gonna pare all that down to the bare minimum starter package to get you set up and started making furniture. And guess what? I can get you set up for under $1,000. That's right, I'm gonna put a whole list of tools together that you need to know about. It's gonna be in the video description with all the links so you can get set up and you can build some furniture. So, let's do this. Cutting. It's a good place to start because it's probably the broadest category when it comes to woodworking tools. There are more saws than there are stars in the sky. That's probably an exaggeration, but there's a lot of different kinds of saws. So I'm going to show you some of the basic saws that you would use, when you're first starting out. So you have your jigsaw. This is a Festool jigsaw, works really well. There are much cheaper jigsaws than Festool, so if you're just starting out, don't go blowing all your money on a Festool. You probably don't need it. Milwaukee is another great jigsaw. They make a really good product, so that's another good option. Then you have a circular saw, or some people call them skill saws, named after the Skill brand, which is what this one is. Skill saws are great for ripping down sheets. You can do a ton of different stuff with skill saws. And then if you want to get a little fancier, you can get a track saw, which is basically a skill saw with a track that guides it along so you can cut perfectly straight cuts. A lot of people say, hey, if you have a track saw, you can save money, get a track saw, you don't need a table saw or anything like that. But if you look into the prices of most track saws, you can actually get a job site table saw for cheaper than you can get a track saw, and you can do a lot more unique cutting things on a table saw than you can on a track saw. It's a lot more versatile when you start putting dado stacks in there and you can get fancier. So if you're gonna buy one or the other, I would forego the track saw for now and just get yourself a job site table saw because it's kind of your bread and butter in the shop. And then I always like to have a few of these Japanese pull saws laying around. They come in super handy for getting in tight corners, cutting flush cut dowels, I mean, you name it. I use these for probably things you shouldn't use them for, but they're fun. So those are the basic smaller saws. Now I'm going to show you some of the bigger saws and really the saws that you actually have to get started. All right, here are some of the bigger saw options. Now, as much fun as the smaller saws are and as handy as those can be in certain situations, when you're just starting out woodworking, I really don't think you need to bother with the small saws yet. Those are always something you can add on later. The two saws that I would say you have to have in order to really get the job done is a chop saw and a table saw. Between these two saws, you can pretty much do anything you want to do. Chop saws, don't blow the bank. You can get a Festool Capex and spend, $2,000, but you don't need to. There's a ton of great job site chop saws on stands, on Amazon. You get the freestanding chop saw, build it into your own bench. I have linked a very good quality Hitachi chop saw in the links below. That's a great starting out point. I think it's like $160 or something, so it's really not that expensive to get a pretty decent chop saw. The other thing you're going to want is a table saw. Now again, you could spend $6,000 getting a really nice table saw, but you don't have to. If you're starting out, a job site table saw will do everything a big table saw will do. You can even put a dado stack in these things, so you can do dadoed grooves for shelving or different kinds of joinery. I've also linked a job site table saw in the description below, so there's one of those. And these two items are going to be in my pared down list of things that you have to have. And you can get these two things and still get everything you need for under $1,000. So table saw, chop saw, good things to have. That pretty much sums up cutting. Let's go on to the next category. Let's talk about drilling, all right? Now, drilling is almost like sawing. There's a million different tools you can get that involve drilling, but when it comes to starting out, you can keep it pretty stinking basic. You don't need to run out and buy a big industrial-sized drill press because in most applications, you're not gonna need it. Sure, would it be nice? Yes. Would it make things easier? Absolutely. But remember, we're talking about just what'll get you by. So I would just run out and get a simple combo kit of an impact driver and a drill. Some people have asked me, like, if I just have to get one or the other, what should I get? Just get both. They're not that expensive. You can get a combo kit. Get the Makita combo kit. I love Makita. Their batteries last forever. They have good drive. I've never had any issues with them. I think you can get this combo kit of the drill and driver for like $160. And you can do a ton of stuff with this. The impact driver is definitely way better at, putting fasteners in, things like that. And then the drill, obviously, drill bits, drilling holes in wood, you're gonna wanna use that as well. So, just go get a combo kit. That pretty much covers drilling. You don't get fancy. It's not that big a deal. Done. When it comes to milling, you basically have two machines that you're gonna use in unison. You're gonna have the joiner, which is behind me over here, and you're gonna have a planer. Now, joiners and planers traditionally are very expensive tools, especially huge ones like these, which I'm not recommending you get if you first are starting out. They do make little lunchbox planers that aren't super expensive. I think you can get a DeWalt, which is a really good planer. I used to have that one before this one. I think it's around $270, $300, and then you can get a benchtop joiner as well for, somewhere in the same ballpark. But let me let you in on a little secret. If you're just starting out and you don't want to drop a ton of cash, don't get a planer and don't get a joiner. S4S. S4S stands for surfaced on four sides. You can go into a lumber shop, you can order S4S lumber that is already planed, it is already joined, and it is pretty much ready to go. It's a little bit more expensive to do it that way, but if you go that route, you can not have a planer and not have a joiner for a very long time and still start making furniture. And that's what I'm trying to do for you guys in this video, is get you building as soon as possible. So I'm not even gonna include these tools in my $1,000 shop setup at the end of this video. They're not even in there because you don't have to have them. Just get S4S. Boom. Sanding. Oh, lordy, lordy. You could spend a lot of money on sanding. Believe me, I have. Unfortunately, all I have to show you guys is Festool sanders because that's all I have in my shop because I have a Festool addiction. But like everything else, if you're starting out, you don't need the Festool stuff. It's just fancy, and I like to pretend that I'm fancy. This is my basic sanding setup. So I have this big Rotex, which is kind of my finish sander. Some people think I'm crazy for doing my finish sanding with a Rotex, but it works great for me. And then I have a small ETS 125. This is actually a pretty good starting sander. It's not that expensive as far as Festool goes. I think this is like $150. It's just a good all-around sander for, hitting everything. I wouldn't want to do an entire huge tabletop with this, although you can if you're just starting out. And then I have the DTS 400. The thing I like about this is it's got the pointy nose on it, so you can get in a lot of nooks and crannies. But forget about that stuff. Just go out and buy a simple random orbit sander to start out with. That's all I had to begin with, and I rocked that thing for years. I had a DeWalt, which I thought worked great. I've also heard Rigid's another good brand. I've linked some in the description below so you can pick one up for $47, and it's a great sander. So don't worry about the expensive stuff right now. The other thing I would recommend is for the little round sanding discs. You can get one of these on Amazon for $9. It's a little Velcro sticky pad, and the sanding disc Velcro's right on there. I use this thing all the flippin' time. $9, you can get in all the little nooks and crannies. I usually go over all my pieces with this after the random orbit sander just because sometimes it leaves little swirl marks and everything. So $9, definitely get yourself a sanding pad. That pretty much covers sanding, right? Okay. All right, let's talk about shaping. I don't even know if that's the right title for this category, but when it comes to shaping your wood, I'm talking about if you want to put roundovers or, ornate edge detail on your furniture pieces, get yourself this little DeWalt trim router. Get this exact router, and I'll tell you why. I've had this thing for probably 5 years, and I beat the crap out of it, and it's still going strong. I have a really nice big Festool router, but I use this thing probably way more than that because you can do anything with this. You can do roundovers, you can do all your little edge detail, you can put this in jigs to cut out circular tabletops, you can do, grooves across to make dado slots to put shelves in. This thing is super universal. As you continue on in your woodworking, goals, you might want to upgrade to something bigger because it kind of speeds things up, but I still use this constantly. It is a very good tool to have. Link in the description below. They also make a plunge base for that, so it's crazy versatile. Awesome tool. Can't say enough. I'm not even sponsored by DeWalt. The other thing you're going to want to get is people are obsessed with hand planes. If you're just starting out, you don't need a bunch of hand planes. You're not going to be doing all this hand planing stuff. You're just going to screw stuff up and get tear out because you probably just don't know what you're doing. But what you do want to get is a little block plane. Comes in super handy when you're putting drawers together and you need to flush everything up. You just need to take a little bit off the edge of a door or something like that. Block planes, they're good for adding a little chamfer around the edge on things. So get yourself a block plane. This is a Lee Nielsen. It's a very good block plane. I love this. Can't say enough good things about it, but it's also very expensive. Get on Amazon. Stanley makes some decent block planes if you're just starting out. Grizzly's just came out with a whole line of block planes and hand planes. So a little block plane, you use it all the time. The other thing is some card scrapers. This is more of a finishing item. I just threw it in here because they sit next to my block plane. Card scrapers are awesome. Some people finish entire tabletops with these things. I personally don't because I don't like my thumbs catching on fire from the friction, but I do use these in seams where there's glue squeeze out. These are the perfect thing to clean up in little corners when you get glue squeeze out. So a couple card scrapers, you can make your own. They're just a hunk of metal that you put a nice little, edge on there, or you can buy them. They sell them on Amazon. I think you can get one for like $4. Super cheap. That's all I'm really going to say about kind of shaping stuff is basically just get a little trim router. You can use it in a million different ways. Next category. I'm glad you could join me because now we're going to talk about joining. You see what I did there? All right, joining. There's a zillion different ways you can join. Obviously, the cheapest way you could do it is just to use one of your saws that I talked about earlier, a little pole saw, and do hand cut mortise and tenons. But if you're just starting out, I'm guessing you're probably not quite to that level yet. So you're looking for an easier, more efficient way of joining stuff, and I got a couple options for you. The hands down number one thing I would suggest if you're just starting out and you don't want to spend a ton of money is the doweling jig. Now, these are super easy to use. They're basically just little clamps that guide your drill into a piece of wood so that you can insert a dowel that can connect two pieces of wood together. You can pick this one up for, I think it's a Rockler product. I think it's $47, so not very expensive. And you already got your combo kit with the drill. That's all you need is the drill, the doweling jig. You can join wood together. They make two different options though. They have the smaller one, which is good for most things, but if you're going to do bigger pieces of furniture, they also make a wide mouth doweling jig that I think can go up to about 6 inches. So if you're going to do like big beefy table legs with a connected skirt, you might want to spend a little bit of extra money and get the wide mouth one. I think this one's about $65 versus $47, so still not very expensive, but this is my preferred, recommended thing if you're just starting out for joinery. It's a great joint. You can do a ton of different stuff with a doweling jig. I built furniture for years just using doweling jigs, but then I wanted to get a little faster, so I started to upgrade. Another good thing to have, especially if you're doing cabinet or case work, is a Craig jig. Now, pocket holes, they get a bad rap in the woodworking industry, mostly because people are trying to use this to do joints that it wasn't intended for. You're not going to want to use pocket holes to put furniture together in a structural way because it's just not as strong as, let's say, a doweled together piece of furniture. But this does work great for hooking plywood boxes together if you're doing cabinetry. So if you're going to go more towards the cabinet side of things, get yourself a Craig jig. It works great, and most of the time you can hide all those pocket holes internally inside the cabinet where you're not going to see it. I think to get the simple Craig jig set up, this one with the clamp and everything, it's $99. They do have an option that's a little bit cheaper, which is basically just this plate that you can clamp onto stuff. So that's another option too. This is just so much easier to use. I'd spend the extra money, get this one, 99 bucks. Then, if you really want to step your game up, you could get the Domino Joiner by Festool. This has definitely revolutionized the joining game when it comes to furniture making, but let me let you in on a little secret. This is just a $1,500 doweling jig. That's all it is. Festool is going to jump out and shoot me or something. But seriously, if you don't want to spend $1,500, get a doweling jig. The only advantage to this is it does it so stinking fast and precise. So in my shop, because I'm a full-time furniture maker, it makes total sense for me to drop the money on the domino joiner because speed is money. If I can build something quicker, obviously I'm gonna make more money. So I wanted the, accuracy and the speed. So I got the domino joiner. When it comes to the domino joiner, there's two options. There's the XL and there's the, I don't know, noisy cricket version, the smaller one. Both of them are great. A lot of questions I get is, okay, I want to spend the money on a domino joiner, which one should I get? I know it's more expensive, but if you're just gonna buy one, I'd get the bigger one. And the reason is it will do everything you want it to do, where you are a little bit limited with the smaller one. The only thing the big one doesn't do the best, but it can do, is 3/4 inch material. It gets a little trickier. You gotta kind of make a little plate. It's a whole thing. I don't have time to explain it now, but you can make it work for 3/4. I had the XL alone for a really long time, but I was doing so much 3/4 material. I got the little one just to make my life easier. But if you're just gonna get one, I'd get the bigger one. It's more expensive. It works great for furniture because you can use bigger tenons and everything to hook it together. So when it comes to joining, that's all I gotta say. Bottom line, if you're looking to save money, just go buy a doweling jig. And all my videos that I show on how to build stuff, even though I'm using the domino joiner, you can simply interchange the doweling jig in replacement for that. No problem. So there's joining. Something that goes right along with joining is clamping. Now, clamping is a tricky thing when you're first starting out because it's true. You can never have enough clamps, and when you're first getting started, you're not gonna have enough clamps because you could easily drop $3,000 just on clamps. I probably have, and I still don't feel like I have enough clamps. But when you're just getting started, there's a few clamps I would recommend just as the bare minimum. First, you're gonna want some of these F-body style clamps. You're gonna want a couple of the little ones because they come in really handy for doing little stuff. And then get a couple of the longer, beefier F-style clamps. These are great clamps. I use them all the time. You can use them in a bunch of different circumstances. They're awesome. And then for bigger stuff where you need a little bit more hold, I would recommend getting some of these big cabinet makers clamps. They're really nice. The slide is good. The thing that I love about them is you got so much surface area in here that's actually like giving clamping force. So you can really get it on a big, beefy piece of stock and get a lot of clamping force. These are a great option. Another good option are these bar clamps. They're a little bit more expensive because when you're buying these clamps, one thing to note, if you're just starting out, you're gonna buy them and you're just gonna get these little orange parts and you're gonna be like, what the heck? You have to go buy the pipe separate. And the piping can be a little bit expensive, but the nice thing here is you buy the ends and you can make them any length you want. So you can have, you could just buy a few ends, but have a bunch of different lengths of pipe and then switch them out when you want, longer or shorter clamps. So that's another great option. But like I said, you're gonna be buying clamps for the rest of your life. Just deal with it. It's the bane of every woodworker's existence. So welcome to the club. Last but not least is measuring, marking, and this one is super simple. Have you ever heard of a tape measure? Now the thing to note is not all tape measures are exactly the same. If you go into Home Depot and you just buy a big bulky Stanley tape measure, those are really designed for framing houses, so they're not gonna have the accuracy that you're probably gonna want when you're building furniture. My preferred tape measure is these little fast cap tape measures, but they're super cheap. You can get them on Amazon for $7.99. I put a link down below. These are actually pretty cool. They got a built-in pencil sharpener, which is awesome, that I've never used. They got this little foot on the bottom, so when you stretch it out and set it on a piece of wood, the foot actually keeps it in until you pick it up, and then it goes back in, so you're not fumbling around trying to keep the thing out. The thing I really like about this is the measurements are double-sided. So you have the exact same measurements on both sides of the tape, which comes in more handy than you would think when you're laying it out, because depending on how you're oriented, you got a mark on one side and you're not trying to guess by extending that mark across the tape measure. So it's a lot more accurate. This one also goes down to 30 seconds of an inch, which is great because obviously you're gonna wanna try and be as accurate as possible. One weird question I get all the time is what's my preferred pencil to use in the shop? I just go get little mechanical pencils. You never have to worry about sharpening them. I just keep a bunch of packets of lead laying around. I buy like cases of 100 of these and I just chuck them all over my shop. That way I know wherever I am, I can just grab a mechanical pencil. There's probably a zillion of these that end up in my washer, and my wife gets really mad about that. But mechanical pencils are great for marking. Get some of those. The other thing you're going to want to get is a speed square or a little square so that you can just transverse straight lines across pieces. These are Woodpecker's brands. I cannot say enough good stuff about Woodpecker's. Their accuracy is the best you're going to find on the market, but they are pretty expensive. So if you're trying to save money, don't necessarily get Woodpecker's to start out with. I am sponsored by Woodpecker's, so hopefully they don't get mad at me saying that. But my guess is you're gonna get something cheaper. It's gonna work great for a while, and eventually you're gonna wanna upgrade. That's when you can get the Woodpecker's. I put a link in the description to a more affordable square option to get you started, but keep Woodpecker's in mind. I did my job there. All right. That's it for all of my tool categories. Now I'm going to lay out what I think is the pared down bare minimum to get you started. And like I said, it's under $1,000, everything you need to build furniture for quite a long time until you want to upgrade. So here it is. All right, I have scoured the internet to find affordable but good quality tools to get you set up for under $1,000. And here's what I would recommend. Like I said, with these basic tools, you can pretty much build any piece of furniture you're gonna want to. Is it gonna be the most convenient? Probably not, but it will get you started. This is what I recommend. You're gonna want a drill and an impact driver set. Get a combo kit, costs about $169. Makita, great brand, I highly recommend it. You're gonna want an orbital sander. You don't have to get a Festool. I put a link in the description below for a comparable DeWalt orbital sander, $47, not bad, great sander. You're gonna want a router, super universal tool. You can do a ton of different stuff with this, everything from cutting out different shaped tabletops to putting nice edges on things. Routers are great. This DeWalt one, super awesome. When it comes to joining, get the doweling jig, $47. It's not gonna set you back too much. You can build a zillion different kinds of pieces of furniture. You can join things. It's gonna be great. And they're kind of fun to use. So do that. Get yourself a tape measure. Like I said, I like the fast cap. Get yourself a speed square. I have a good affordable option in the video description down below. Get yourself a few basic clamps. Get a couple of the F-style bar clamps here, and then get a couple of the bigger cabinet maker clamps. I found two different options that I put in the video description where it's actually a 2-pack, so it kind of saves you a little bit of money. And they're these same pony clamps, so they're good clamps. It's what I prefer to use in my shop. Then you're gonna wanna get yourself a table saw. Just get a simple job site table saw to start off with. The nice thing is, this is the first table saw that I ever got before I got my big cabinet table saw. And when I upgraded, I still now have my job site table saw, so if I ever have to go out of the shop and do installs, I already got this one. So it's not like you're spending money that you're gonna have to then throw away later. It's always nice to have a backup table saw if your other one breaks down. So just get a job site table saw to start out with and then upgrade later. I put a good job site table saw in the video description as well. And then last but not least, you're gonna need a chop saw. This is where you're gonna break down all of your material. Get yourself a nice one. I put one, it's a Hitachi in the video description. Great little chop saw to get started with. All of this stuff is all you're gonna need to start building furniture, and you can get it all for under $1,000. Just look in that tab in the video description. It says shop setup for under $1,000. All the links are right there. I really hope this helps, and please, if you have any other questions, put them in the comment section down below and I will try and answer them to the best of my ability. Now, go make some furniture. Or go to the bathroom or something. This video is kind of long. You might need a bathroom break. Go to the bathroom, then come back and make some furniture.